replied. "You're never going to hit the moon," the dad said. The boy responded, "Maybe not, but I'm getting closer to it than you are." I'm Todd Wright from Midway Church, helping you keep life in focus. For more information, go to midwaychurch.com or toddwright.com.
National headlines, Georgia State news and sports, and the local stories you care about. News Talk 1330 WLBB, Carrollton.
Good morning, folks. This is Jason Swindle here on the Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health Systems. I'm the guest host today and also auditioning for maybe a permanent job here. You never know. Today I have with me a friend, someone who I look up to in the community, Bob Jackson of the Reentry Coalition here in Carrollton. Bob, how are you doing today?
Doing great this morning, man. How yourself?
Doing great,
Good.
We've got a special holiday today, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Today is a federal and state holiday commemorating the life and death of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I've got a couple of trivia questions for you, Bob. Let's see if you can answer these.
Okay.
Well, today's the 16th of January, right?
That's correct.
All right. He wasn't born on the 16th, was he?
No.
What day was he born?
He was born on January 15th.
The 15th. Okay,
That's correct.
Yesterday. And if he was still alive today, how old would he be?
Exactly 88 years old.
88 years old. And it's amazing there's so many people I know in their late 80s and early 90s who are still alive. But anyway, today we're going to talk a little bit about the Reentry Coalition, some of the things that the coalition does, and hopefully educate some of the community who doesn't know much about the coalition. Bob, in a statement, a generalized statement, tell me a little bit about what the coalition does.
Reentry Coalition Incorporated really was organized back in 2004. And at that time, we were under the umbrella of the NAACP. And we moved from the NAACP in 2011. Since then, it's been Reentry Coalition Incorporated. And what we do is men and women that are coming out of prison, we intercept them and try to give them the skills, connect them with jobs, connect them with the community, and in any kind of way that we can help them acclimate themselves back into the community. It comes with counseling or mentoring, jobs, helping with driver's license, birth certificates, helping them secure housing sometime.
Okay.
Or just outright mentoring.
Okay. Well, as a criminal defense attorney, I'm familiar with the coalition, but a lot of people aren't. Mm-hmm. And some people may ask the question, well, who cares about people who have been in prison, ex-convicts coming out on parole? Why should we care about them and what they're doing? They shouldn't be part of society anyway. What would you say to that?
Well, when people are sent to prison, they're sent to prison for punishment in some cases, and they're sent to prison to reform, to think about some of the things that they've done. We owe them a second chance in the community to regroup and reestablish themselves, to become viable citizens in the community, paying taxes, getting jobs, taking care of their families, doing all the things that normal people do. Change their thinking. And in order to do that, the community has to be involved to help them do that.
And if somebody's been in prison for quite some time, there's a term institutionalized that I've heard. I think the Shawshank Redemption, the movie, was the first time that I heard that. Do you find people who have been in prison for quite some time to be what you would say institutionalized?
Jason, we've heard that term over the last 13, 14 years. What we've found is that it's a very few people that are actually institutionalized from the point of they're doing things to go back to prison. Most of the time it's because they haven't really understood what their role is in the community. They haven't worked in the mainstream. They haven't been involved in the mainstream, such as having a checking account, credit cards, ATM cards, having a regular job, paying insurance, saving money, paying house taxes and stuff of that nature. They don't understand that. They don't understand that process. And so they do what they are accustomed and understand to do. And that sounds like and looks like it's a institutionalized person. But what it is that they're not operating above the radar. They operate below the radar. Our job is to get them to understand that there is above the radar of the world. And what they need to do is start focusing on living above the radar.
So the bottom line is this, and I know this as well, unless you're convicted of murder or some of the what we call the 7 deadly sins, which are very serious crimes, you're going to come back into the community at some point, okay?
97%.
97%
Right.
of the time. So you have people coming back into the community. We all want our community to be the best it can be, and so the Reentry Coalition takes people and acclimates them back into the community, no matter how long they've been gone, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's start with jobs, for instance. If somebody is working, then they're typically going to be paying taxes. How does that work? How does the Reentry Coalition assist in getting somebody a job or helping them find one?
Well, one of the things we do is build relationships with employers across the county. We haven't been real successful in doing that, and that's one thing that we need to really focus hard on this year and going forward, is getting employers to hire these people. The one thing that we're trying to do, not trying, but what we've been doing, is going inside the prisons now and interview inside the prisons, and that way we can start to put together a portfolio for the men and women that are coming home and try to line them up with a company that meets their skills, that are looking for their skills. And in so doing, we find that these guys, these men and women, will not recidivate because they have a way of means. Most of the time, jobs is the biggest problem for returning citizens and for people going back to prison, not having the means to support themselves or the means to actually live and exist.
Because then they can go back to what sent them to prison in the first place, and that would be committing crimes, right?
That's true. Well, I mean, they do what they're used to doing. They do what brings them income.
Right.
And what we are looking to do, like I said, this year is to develop more work force across the county with the various companies, giving the people a chance. We know Governor Deal signed a bill to ban the box, which means that those companies that had rejected people with records can now start interviewing the people on their skills, not necessarily on the fact that they marked the box that they had been to prison.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that. I know that Governor Deal has done a lot for our state when it comes to criminal justice reform. He's just about to be, well, he'll be out of office soon.
Right.
I certainly hope the next governor picks up where Nathan Deal left off. One thing I've noticed, Bob, is that many of my clients are extremely skilled when it comes to working. If you take the drugs and alcohol away, when they have drugs and alcohol, they're a totally different person. Without that, these are some of the most talented people that you will meet. And I don't know that people in society realize that. Is that your experience too?
That is the overall gist of things. We are the liaison between the returning citizen and the community. And what we try to do is develop that relationship for people and meet and greet the community and let them know that the people that they have sent away, okay, is not necessarily a bad person. They made bad choices, they made bad decisions, but they're not necessarily a bad person. And a large majority of these people have held jobs in the community prior to their incarceration. Now, we do have a small percentage of people that have never worked. Those are the ones that are harder to get into employment.
Well, I'm a conservative, and it seems to me that the Reentry Coalition, the goals, in my view, are very conservative. You're putting people back to work. You are promoting responsibility for people who have made mistakes and are back in our community. Would you agree with that?
I agree. When we look at crime in a community, it affects everybody. When we look at sending people to prison, it affects everybody. When they come home, it affects everybody. This cuts across political lines. It cuts across race lines. It cuts across gender, religion. When you talk about a prisoner in prison, we don't ask whether they're Jew, Gentile, Baptist, Methodist. We don't ask that question. But when you look at the statistics in Georgia, where 1 out of 13 people in Georgia have either been to prison, on probation, or parole. And when you look at any group, somebody in that group is either on probation or parole, which means it doesn't ask whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian. We're talking about people. So it affects the entire community, and the entire community has a responsibility, just like they do returning, to help these men and women get back into the mainstream or get into the mainstream if they've never been there, to go on with a productive life.
Those are some stunning statistics, particularly the 1 in 13, and we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. For now, we're going to take a brief break. We'd like to again thank Tanner Health Systems for sponsoring this show, and we'll be right back.
Need help finding something healthy to eat? Tanner Health System has an app for that. Minuit helps you find healthy food options on the go. The smartphone app is powered by Tanner's Health experts, who teamed up with restaurants across West Georgia to make it easier for you to choose healthy food and eat better. Minuit acts like your personal nutrition assistant, showing you the healthiest items on the menu. So when you're not sure what's good to eat, Minuit. You can even use the app to look up recipes and plan healthy meals at home, and modify your options based on nutritional preferences, such as a low-sodium or vegetarian diet. Minuit and Tanner Health System, making it easier to eat healthy and live well. A healthier lifestyle is only a fingertip away. Minuit is free to download on your Apple or Android smartphone. You can download it today by searching Minuit in the App Store or on Google Play. Learn more about Minuit at gethealthylivewell.org.
Welcome back, folks. This is Jason Swindle on the Community Voice. I have my guest today, Bob Jackson, the Executive Director of the Reentry Coalition, Incorporated. Bob, we were talking about some statistics earlier, and you mentioned something that I knew about, but it shocks me every time that I hear it. In Georgia, 1 in 13 people have been to prison or have been on parole or probation. Is that right?
That's correct. Or is still on parole or probation.
Okay. That's a pretty staggering number, because during the day I probably walk past or speak to more than 300 people, and that's not including in the law office. That's just out in the community. Do you have any idea why that number is so large?
2016, the legislation passed a bill, and in that bill, it talked about the returning citizens going back to prison, back and forth to prison. A lot of times, they're sent back because of violations of technicality, not necessarily of committing another crime. And when we look at what is that technicality, don't have a job, didn't report for the most part. And most of the guys, the ladies, do not report to probation because if they don't have the money to pay their probation fees, they have heard historically that they lock them up. So they avoid going to report, but they don't realize that the judge don't sign a warrant because you didn't report. I mean, you didn't pay money. They signed a warrant because you didn't report. But when you look at the amount of people that goes back to prison on those technicalities, that's where our recidivism rates was so high. But hopefully with the way that things are done now going forward, that there has to be a hearing before we send these people back to prison. And let's look at what is causing them not to report. Number one, they don't have a job, don't have money. So that's one of the reasons. Now, drugs is a big problem. And it's a problem that we really got to hone in on, because a lot of the men and women, I don't know, they get caught back up in the drug thing or back up dealing with drugs. However, because they're not working They're kind of, between jobs. And that's why it's so important to kind of get these people working as soon as they come out of prison. Get them into the job force, back into the job workforce, which is what they normally been doing while they were in prison. So they're used to working, but we have that window of time that we are losing them at that point.
I agree with you on that. I see that every day in court. We have probation revocation hearings. Sometimes it's a new charge, but oftentimes there are technical violations. And, I'm not making excuses for people who have violated the conditions of probation because they know what they are.
Right.
But some of the reasons that you mentioned are absolutely the cause as to why someone gets in trouble, maybe gets locked up on a probation warrant. But avoiding probation is the worst thing you could possibly do in the world. I do know that probation officers work with people when they don't have enough money to pay probation fees or the restitution amounts are not where they should be. Certainly much better to talk with them or even talk with the judge rather than just avoid, because when you avoid, the warrant's coming.
Yeah,
yeah. All right. So when it comes to people coming out of the system and being placed on parole, typically, because people usually make parole unless they're under a sentence that's non-parolable, like an armed robbery. How do they get to the Reentry Coalition?
Well, we've had a long-standing relationship with the Department of Corrections, the Parole Board, the Governor's Office, Department of Labor, you name them, the agencies of the state. And with the Department of Corrections, every 90 days, they send us a release form, meaning not a release form, but a list of the releases, people that are coming back to Carrollton. That's every 90 days. And the averages have been anywhere from 75 to 110 coming back every 90 days, being discharged. Well, when we get that list, what we do is we call the institutions, set up an appointment. First, we send the letters out that's addressed to each one of the names that's on that list. And when we send that out, they respond back. And when they respond back, we call the institutions, set up a phone interview for those people, and discuss and talk about their charges, their records, their history, their parents, the families, you name it, and trying to get to know them, outside of looking at their record or looking at their charges, trying to get to know the person.
That's pretty in-depth. I didn't realize that. So you don't have people just show up on your doorstep and say, hey, I just got out of prison, I need some help.
Periodically,
or does that happen?
Periodically, that happens. We've had people show up that's been out 15 years, and they find themselves, after listening and hearing about reentry, they find themselves in that same position that a guy just getting out, which is a real concern, because you've been out that long, which means that you've been working to try to stay out, but you still have those hiccups. You still have that collateral consequences that you're constantly being bombarded with or hit with. And we bring them in and deal with them.
And for fiscal conservatives, there are other positives to what you do as well, I suppose. You've got some people who are going back to work, paying taxes. You also don't have the cost of incarceration, the cost of county incarceration, the cost of prison incarceration, the cost of the welfare benefits that some people would be receiving if they were not working. So it seems to me that even if you weren't so touchy-feely, I guess, as a person, when it comes to other people getting out of prison, from a fiscal standpoint, it seems like the Reentry Coalition is helping our county and our state save money. Would that be right?
You're right on it, Jason. We've been talking this from 2004 all the way up until now, and we will continue. When you asked the question early on about why is reentry so important to our community, reentry is the champion of prevention. We want to prevent people from returning back to prison. We know the cost. It is $61 on an average, $61 per person per day to house at the county. Now, the average number in the county is anywhere from 350 to 425. Okay, so you calculate that $61 times that number times 30 or times 365. That becomes enormous. Then when you look at the state that range anywhere from 17,000 to 21,000 per person per year, you multiply that. That's an enormous amount of money. At one point, we were in in Georgia, almost $1.5 billion spent to house, to go through the system, you name it. It cost the system that much money to operate the Department of Corrections, which was an enormous amount of money. And you look at education, we could have put some of that money in education if we had reduced recidivism throughout the county, throughout the state. And that's what we look at, too. We look at helping to reduce those numbers so that we can get more money in education, which is what the governor has done in his last act, was to develop education programs and enforce that inside the system. So if they don't have GEDs, when they come out, they will have.
We're going to go a little further into that, Bob, after this break. We thank Tanner Health Systems for sponsoring this show, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
In sports, when you play to win, you get your game on. Shouldn't the same be true when it comes to your health? At Tanner Health System, we're going to help you get your healthy on. Tanner is leading the way for you to eat better, get fit, manage or prevent diabetes, and live tobacco-free, so you and your family can get your healthy on every day. It all starts at GetHealthyLiveWell.org. Check out upcoming healthy living events and join others in the community taking action to live well every day. GetHealthyLiveWell.org. Tanner Health System's way of helping you get your healthy on.
Need motivation and support to eat healthier, become more physically active, or quit tobacco? Tanner offers free classes to help you get your healthy on. Register today by calling 770-214-CARE. That's 770-214-CARE. Learn more at GetHealthyLiveWell.org.
All right, we're back at the Community Voice. This is Jason Swindle. I am the, I guess you might say, temporary host today, or the guest host. And my guest today is Bob Jackson with the Reentry Coalition. Bob, you've done a great job explaining what the Reentry Coalition does, some of the causes. You've actually, even though I've known a lot about reentry, you've educated me on some things that I didn't know about. One thing that I seem to think about from time to time when I think about people leaving the prison system, maybe going to reentry, maybe not, is what type of resources does a Reentry Coalition have? And I mean money, people, facilities. Do you have enough resources now, or can the community help out?
I'm smiling right now, but you can always use resources, financial resources, volunteers, resources to do technical things like gather statistics, do visitations inside the prisons, which is much better than the phone calls. We have a lot of problems right now with housing for sex offenders. And when we first set things up in 2004, we did a lot of studies between 2004 and 2007. But from 2007 to now, that charge has grown tremendously. And it's a really challenging process to try to house these individuals. And sometimes we have to send them out of the county because we don't have the facilities here in Carrollton to house them. And they are all from Carrollton. They're homegrown.
Well, and that's because they are on the sex offender registry, and under that law, they can only live in certain places.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the hotels that they have here charges a horrendous amount of money to house them. And if they don't have it, then we have to provide for them and try to get them jobs. That's another challenge, is getting them jobs to be able to support themselves with that.
And that's certainly a specialized issue, and I'm thinking that sex offenders would be sort of in the minority of people that you're dealing with.
That's
here.
correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, but for the majority of folks, what about employers in the community? For instance, yesterday I was speaking with an employer, and he told me that he hired 4 people today. He said he was going to hire them today to work on his crew who are currently just out of prison. Now, I don't know if they're in the Reentry Coalition or not, and I asked him why he did that, and he said that he learned a lot from a man named Art Garcia in the community, who you probably know, who runs a rehab, and wanted to give some of these people a chance to see how they would do. It'd be great if more employers would just take maybe a little bit of a risk and hire some of these folks. What do you think about that?
We love it. We would really love to do that. And let me make something clear to the public. We are just as conservative in our thinking about pushing people forward to jobs, to education. However, we got to make sure that we do the best match. We've got to put the best people out there to set those examples. So we do screening, we interview, and we make sure, as best of our ability, we make sure that this person is viable, they have the right skills, has the right attitude, has the discipline, has the desire, the ambition to go forward and to capture a second chance on life. The only thing we need right now is to be able to have those companies that say, okay, I'll take 2, I'll take 3, I'll take 5, warehouse, construction, landscaping, cooks, dishwashers, you name it. Some of the lower skilled jobs, and I'm saying lower skills, but at the same time, they're jobs that will provide livelihood for people that need them.
But I've noticed that some of my clients, some of the people I've seen come out of the community actually have skills that you would say are high skilled as well. Electricians, plumbers, people who are extraordinarily talented, again, if you take away the drugs and you take away the alcohol, people who love their children, people who are good folks without the drugs. So you've got those highly skilled people too, right?
That's true, because a lot of the people that go to prison had jobs, and like you said, had good paying jobs, but they got involved in alcohol, got involved in drugs, or they got involved in gambling, or they've just made a mistake with aggravated assault or something like that. And now they're back, and they utilized those skills while they were in prison. They did great work in prison, because when we interview these guys in prison and talk to the counselors, they say, hey, these guys are great. But it's just when they get home with that tag, trying to get the companies to say, okay, we'll give them a shot.
Our time is short. I've got one last question that I meant to ask in the beginning. But for those people who are still somewhat judgmental about people who make mistakes, go to prison, maybe don't go to prison, do we all deserve a second chance? And when I say all of us, I mean everybody in society. How do you feel about second chances?
You know, when something is done directly to a person, it's hard to speak about giving a second chance. But at the same time, when we look at
you mean victims, right?
Victims,
okay.
Yeah. When we look at our Christian base and concept, we have to learn to forgive and allow a person to show and to demonstrate that they have changed, they have rehabilitated themselves. And, you know, even when we look at charges, we have to blind ourselves to the charge, to the fact that we need to help this person. This person is asking for help, so we need to help them. And that's what we do. And we feel in our heart that everybody deserves a second chance until they show you different.
Well, those are biblical teachings, are they not?
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus Christ taught us as well, right?
To give second chances.
Bob, I really appreciate you being on the program today. Reentry Coalition here in Carrollton. Do you serve any other areas other than Carroll County?
Well, people can call us from all over the state and ask for suggestions on how to get this, how to get that done.
Okay, and do you have the phone number
Yeah,
with you?
phone number is 770-834-6025 or 6092.
Okay. Well, Bob, thanks a lot again. You're one of my local heroes, and I hope to see you soon. It's been great to have you on the Community Voice, and we'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Listen to News Talk 1330